Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, Narendra Modi visits the UK. Just what is he and Surrender Starmer cooking up between them this time? Of course, we're all asking if the name Jagtar Singh Johal cropped up in conversation. Meanwhile, in Punjab, 2 policemen are sentenced for a 1990s fake encounter killing. Again, it's taken 30 years to obtain any sort of justice. More bullets fly in Canada's extortion rings crisis. And we take a look at how AI is impacting the world of Hindutva's propaganda creation and distribution. All this and more on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning. Happy Monday to you, Angus, and to our viewers out there. Again, we are loving all the comments coming in, and we've even been noticing the return of Critics Corner. So remember, stick around to the end of the show, and you never know if your comment's going to make it on the show. So again, keep them rolling.
Indeed. And James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at loads of great comments which have been pouring in. So thank you for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, this week we are going to do a bit of a theme throughout the week, and we're going to be looking at AI and how it is influencing and actually being used powerfully by a lot of different propaganda machines, whether that's in Russia, whether that's in India, or anywhere else. And it is becoming a big issue. The problem is that a lot of people are having a harder and harder time figuring out exactly what is real and what is not. Now, there is a positive when it comes to AI. It is being utilized in crime prevention, crime reduction, and crime solving. It's being used in the world of healthcare, in predictive analysis of data sets to find new solutions to challenges throughout the world. However, it is, again, a very dark side when it is used nefariously, and people are having trouble figuring out the difference. Now, I wanted to play an audio for you. It's a little longer, so bear with us as you listen to it. And it explains about how AI can be used in a positive way. And then, of course, throughout the week, we're going to look at how it's being used in other ways.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really embarking on quite a mission, unraveling how artificial intelligence is breathing new life into the hunt for justice. We're talking cold cases, mass atrocities, serious stuff. We're diving deep into some fascinating articles and research, a lot of it's applied by you, our listener, and we want to uncover the surprising ways this tech is, well, unmasking the past. You know, for decades, you look at cases like the 1984 Sikh genocide in India. Thousands killed, records allegedly altered. The sheer volume of fragmented, maybe manipulated data, it just dimmed hope.
Yeah, and what's really striking here, I think, is that the very thing that makes these historical cases so hard for humans, all that messy, overwhelming, fragmented data, that's actually where AI shines.
Right.
Unlike a human analyst, AI doesn't get tired. It excels at handling these enormous data sets. It turns what looked like noise into, well, potentially valuable signals. It spots connections across just millions of pieces of information.
That's incredible. So, okay, the volume is its strength. But what tools specifically is it using? How does it turn that chaos into something clear?
Exactly. It's quite an impressive toolkit, actually. We're using things like machine learning, which isn't just spotting trends. It's about finding these really subtle, maybe hidden patterns across huge, varied data sets, things a human might just never see.
Right.
Then you've got computer vision that can enhance old photos, degraded video, pull out crucial details, and natural language processing, NLP, it doesn't just read documents fast.
Right.
It can sift through mountains of testimonies, reports, maybe detect subtle shifts in language, or find hidden links between thousands of fragmented texts. It's almost like reading between the lines of history, but on a massive scale.
Wow. So if we connect that to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it sounds like AI isn't just polishing individual clues. It's like building a whole new map of the event.
Precisely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Technologies like knowledge graphs and entity resolution are really key here. Think of knowledge graphs like building this incredibly detailed web.
Every name, date, place from all these different sources, all linked together. And entity resolution. That's the tricky part of figuring out that Jay Smith in one old police report is the same John Smith in a witness statement maybe decades later, even if someone tried to obscure it. So AI connects those dots across this vast, messy landscape. It reveals networks, patterns, things that were literally invisible before.
It's really inspiring to hear about this. Can you give us some, concrete examples? Where has this already made a real difference?
Oh, absolutely. We're definitely seeing breakthroughs. Remember the Golden State Killer?
Of course.
Decades.
Exactly. AI-assisted DNA analysis combined with those public genealogy databases that finally ID'd a suspect.
Yes.
Huge. And then there's the Somerset Police Project over in the UK.
Right. I read about that.
AI compiled evidence for 27 cold cases. It took 30 hours. They estimated that would take a human investigator. Get this, 81 years.
81 years. That it completely changes the game, doesn't it? It redefines what we even think of as a solvable case.
It really does. And for mass casualty events, think about disaster victim identification, DVI, AI-driven frameworks designed for speed and accuracy in major incidents. They've hit like 92% identification accuracy within 48 hours.
Wow, that offers such critical closure for families.
Exactly. And the potential then for cases like the 1984 Sikh genocide, it's immense. The possibility to challenge potentially manipulated stories, uncover more of the truth. It's there.
So, okay, the power is obviously immense, but like any powerful tool, deploying it for justice, it comes with challenges, right? We have to talk about the data it learns from, the biases.
That's a crucial point. A really key insight here is, well, if the AI learns from skewed data, maybe old forensic databases with historical biases, or even deliberately manipulated records, it risks just repeating those biases.
Or worse, creating new misleading leads.
Exactly. Or generating leads that are just wrong. Plus, many AI systems are kind of black boxes.
Meaning we don't always know how it reached a conclusion.
Precisely. We see the data go in, the answer come out, but the complex reasoning, it's often opaque. And that opacity can be a real problem in court. Defense lawyers might challenge evidence if you can't fully explain the AI's logic.
Which brings up another important point. What about privacy? Especially when AI is scraping huge amounts of data, maybe public databases, without everyone's explicit okay.
That's a huge ethical consideration, and it circles back to something vital. AI outputs are leads. They are not definitive proof.
Right.
There's an absolute need, always, for the human in the loop. AI is a powerful tool, yes, but it's not a replacement for human judgment, for careful oversight, for ethical decision-making, especially when people's fundamental rights are involved.
So this deep dive, it really shows AI's incredible potential for historical justice, but also these really critical ethical demands. It seems like collaboration is key. Tech developers, law enforcement, human rights groups.
Absolutely. Along with real transparency and that constant human oversight, it's paramount.
And the ultimate goal.
Well, I think the goal is really to empower local investigators, speed things up, provide accountability, yes, for individual crimes, but also maybe contribute to a fuller historical record, for collective memory, for healing.
Okay, so for you, our curious listener, we always like to leave you with a final thought. Here's one to maybe ponder. How might AI reshape not just solving crimes, but our very understanding of history itself? Moving beyond just cases to uncover a more complete, maybe more data-driven truth. One that could even help prevent future atrocities. Something to think about.
So, as you can see, that script in itself that you just listened to was actually AI created. And it really shows how the AI technologies and other technologies, including the machine learning and the high-powered computing, can be utilized to look at not only recent crimes and trying to use it in a positive there, but that story also refers back to the 1984 Sikh genocide and how it can actually be used as a tool as people move forward to try and piece together a lot of the different clues that were available at the time that maybe the humans didn't have enough sources to actually bring it all together. Or there could have been different statements referring to certain individuals that may not have been linked up previously. Now, where that comes in play is that there was a case recently where there were over 150,000 documents, plus there were witness statements and photos and all kinds of different information. And how the AI brought it in, they did it within 30 hours to disseminate all of that information, find missing links in the investigation, correlate certain data. They estimate that the amount of information that had to be sorted and gone through, it pretty much would have been impossible for humans. It would have taken 81 years. Yes, 81 years for them to actually go through all of that information manually for a team. And when you look at the AI, it was able to go through all of that data, make the correlations and other points that were not seen by humans within 30 hours. Astronomical speed, but also, again, there are still anomalies and what we call hallucinations with AI. So although it could correlate all that information, pull up different things, it can still add false flags into the narrative, into the findings. So again, it is a matter of taking those points that have been identified and then having humans review them to make sure that they actually fit in the context of what was disseminated. So it helps as a tool, but it cannot be used just as a one and only option. It has to have human oversight of all of the systems, all of the processes, and of course the final results. So again, you can see how that definitely could help to bring information and further, hopefully, charges at the end of the day if they were to use certain programs utilizing AI and other technology in the ongoing investigation into the 1984 genocide. It can also, as the story related there, is that it can also help to identify victims of atrocities, not just in the 1984 genocide, but other places around the world. There have been certain disasters where they've started to utilize the AI in terms of DNA and forensics to help the AI identify victims, and they were able to identify a mass volume of victims within 48-hour span utilizing that technology. So again, it's really the cusp of the future, but at the same time, it has a very nefarious side. Now, in closing on this story, something that you may not realize is that the DJs, the announcers that were discussing this story were actually AI as well. And I bet that surprises you because it came through as a very natural flow, a very natural report, and it came through as very human in terms of voice fluctuations, in terms of the terminologies used. So that entire audio clip from the verbal language used through to the voices that were actually reading the prompters or carrying and narrating the story, they were completely AI. And I just punched in a certain sentences, and that's what it came up with. So I thought that it was a great way to start off the week talking about AI, let you hear it first, and then surprise you by telling you that yes, indeed, that entire clip, although accurate, was created by AI. So it gives you pause to think the next time you hear something on the radio or on the computer that sounds very authentic, but it may be fooling you and pulling the wool over your eyes and making you understand something that is far from reality, Angus.
Yes, it's quite frightening, really, isn't it? And, well, AI is an incredible tool. It is extraordinarily powerful, but it's still just a tool, and it's only as good as those that wield that tool, of course. On the positive side, as you've alluded to here, I mean, in terms of sifting information, for the Sikh community and for those who are researching, trying to dig up this evidence information anywhere across this enormous resource of information on the internet and in the public domain, AI does potentially serve a purpose. It can actually dig out information that a human researcher might actually miss because the human researcher literally just doesn't have the time in their lives to go through all the information to pick out anything that could just be that crucial little piece of information that could get a conviction for example, a fake encounter killing or whatever it is. So AI really can serve a massive purpose in that respect. But then conversely, as we talk about the negative side, yes, indeed, there is this danger that it can be and indeed is being used to create misinformation, to create fake news. Good heavens, we see this all across the internet now. Fake news, fake videos, fake audios, serving a purpose of propaganda. And they do influence a lot of people. People are finding it increasingly difficult, as you've just demonstrated, James, to differentiate between a real human and something that is completely artificially created. And that really is really dangerous, because it means now that we have to question absolutely everything that we see or hear. You've immediately got to question anything that you immediately think, wow, that was interesting, or that's amazing. Well, was it real? Was it true? And in fact, it reminds me, James, when we first started, there were a lot of people out there, you remember you used to put in the comments saying, are we AI generated? Are we avatars? Are we real human beings? Well, of course, I could say, of course we're human beings, but then, well, are we? That's the problem. AI is getting that good. And I have to say, I think the people who do produce a lot of video stuff are experimenting massively in using AI avatars, and they're just not quite there yet. Fortunately, hopefully our jobs are still safe just for a little bit longer, James, but it is getting close. But I think the lesson to the audience really is, you've just got to question everything that you see and hear on the internet. Anything that is digital, you really have to check, verify, cross-check. And just be slightly suspicious and cynical. If it's too good to be true, this is the golden rule in life, really. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is.
Absolutely. And it's like when you log into the computer and it says, are you a robot? And you got to click no. And it's like, because a robot would never know how to click no. And there's never a yes option. What if I am a robot? Why don't I get a choice in that?
Discrimination.
But that's technology for us, Angus. And yeah, I think that it throws a lot of people off when you hear an audio like that, and then you realize that was all AI. And that's part of the work I do with the ProPix division of AI. So we create all of the software that can really mess with you. But in any event, let's move on to something a bit more shocking and not shocking at the same time, and that is the ongoing extortion that's going across Canada. Just in the last 2 weeks alone, we've seen about 4 or 5 more shootings in the Metro Vancouver area at businesses, and one of them at a residence, and again linked to the extortion rings that are targeting the South Asian diasporas within the region. Now, when we look at this, it's not just, and when I say the region, I'm talking about just the reports recently, but this is a problem that's going across the country, and we've covered it several times already. But I thought that we would take a bit more of a deep dive into it tonight, Angus, for the simple fact that it is still a concern, and police are still having a challenge of people reaching out and talking to them about not only the current threats and the shootings that they're aware of to get evidence or statements there, but also about reporting initial contact from these potential gang members and others. Now, as we go through, we know that this is a very serious issue because it has been very clear that they are willing to follow through on the threats that they are making. These individuals are sitting at home, they're enjoying their dinner with their families or at their place of business, going about their day. The phone rings. It is a potential extortionist or an alleged extortionist that starts making threats, not only to the individual, but they actually have very in-depth information at times. They'll have home addresses, and they obviously know where the person works because they've just called them there, or vice versa. They also have information on their families, on their children, on their spouses. So they are literally keeping an eye on these people to start to design their entire plan of the extortion. Now, in Metro Vancouver, this is described as a nightmare by one businessman. And we're not going to identify him for the simple fact that he has been receiving these extortion threats. And the calls continue after at first he thought maybe it was just a prank, but then they continued and they continued. And soon after, the sharp crack of gunfire shattered the night, targeting his family's home. And again, it shows that they have this information on the individuals. He went on to state that my children are afraid. My mom and dad are very afraid. The man who spoke, as I said, on condition of anonymity, recounted they don't even want him leaving the house, and they don't want each other leaving the house. They are terrified, and it is continuing. Now, there is another businessman in Abbotsford who's faced more than 25 separate extortion attempts, and one, an unknown caller, delivered the bone-chilling warning. When bullets fly at your family, don't say we didn't warn you, was the quote that they said over the phone. Again, a very direct threat with very real consequences, because we know that people have been killed in this extortion ring as a result of it. Now, the ultimate piece of defiance was paid by Harjeet Dada that we've talked about recently. And he was a 51-year-old Indo-Canadian who did report the threat to police, and that was just in May. He was shot and killed in the parking lot. His murder sent shockwaves through the South Asian communities throughout Canada. Now, this is, again, showing that they are really serious about their threats. And with that, it's a lot of the extortion is being done at the hands or the claims of being linked to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang and the Brothers Keepers, the two big gangs that are really linked to this extortion problem. And the other thing is that there are people the police suspect that are utilizing the Bishnoi name where they are not actually affiliated with the Lawrence Bishnoi gang in any way, but are using it because they know the fear that name is driving in the community. Now, they are really going after the South Asian diaspora. There are many cases that we've talked about, the Project Gaslight by the Edmonton Police Service, and that there cracked down on a large extortion ring and led to the Canada-wide warrant for the alleged ringleader, Maninder Singh Dhaliwal, and that, again, is identifying certain people. Now, they potentially have identified the Project Gaslight crimes being linked to the Brothers Keepers gang, and some possibly, again, with the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. So again, it all has come full circle again. So where they are working together, but again, it is a resurgence. So even though they were very successful in these crackdowns, they're starting to see them start up again. So new people, but also the quick release of the criminals on bail or other conditions, conditional releases they're called, within the Canadian justice system. And that, again, has become a big concern and a big political hot potato as well. So let's just take a quick peek here at the hot spots across Canada. Now, in BC, so Surrey, Abbotsford, those are the two main cities, but again, it's all of the Lower Mainland. They have what they call the Joint Force Operation, and that's 19 plus cases here in Surrey alone in 2025. Okay, so dozens of other incidents since the late 2023, but again, over 19 cases so far this year just in Surrey. Again, the key alleged gang affiliation is the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, and arrest followed by quick release of suspects is causing community outrage. So again, that's a noteworthy event of that. And again, it also really prevents a lot of people from coming forward and speaking out because they don't feel that they are going to be protected when these individuals are so quickly released back onto the streets, and they could and have targeted the witnesses against them to have cases dropped or just, delayed, kind of like what we talk about happens in India as well. Now in Alberta, the province of Alberta, mostly in the city of Edmonton in this report, is Project Gaslight. And there is a new unnamed project, but we won't get into that. They aren't releasing much information because, again, it's ongoing. But 34 events in Project Gaslight were uncovered, and 6 new incidents just in June of this year. So again, it shows how much they are active across the country. Now, these ones are allegedly linked to the Brothers Keepers. Again, also looking at the new wave by the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Whether these individuals are actually associated with Bishnoi or it is just the cachet of his name, really driving that threat of violence. That is another question, but I would say that it's probably a good combination of both. Now, in Ontario, in the Peel region, which includes Brampton, the Extortion Investigative Task Force, or EITF, is really working hard as well under the project name Outsource. We know about this one because they've already announced a very large number of arrests on that one that we covered a few weeks back, or I guess about a month ago. And that was 29 attempts of extortion by early 2024 and over 60 cases since December of 23. That is, again, in the local Brampton-based ring, and that was Project Outsource, but they have other projects that are ongoing as they see these extortion attempts continuing. Now, the suspected Bishnoi links in some of the cases, and they had a major success with Project Outsource, seizing $4.2 million in assets. Now, it's also important to remember, though, that these... even just one extortion attempt we've heard that was at $2 million. That one didn't get paid, but how many are not being reported and how many millions of dollars are being pushed out the door to these crime groups, and how much of it is staying in Canada, how much is being sent overseas to fund other types of issues, we'll say terrorism or otherwise. Now, one of the concerns about the calling by the British Columbia and Alberta premiers to label the Lawrence Bishnoi gang as a terrorist organization is that they also have the realistic concern that it could actually work as a PR coup for Lawrence Bishnoi. Again, showing that his fear has reached around the globe and that he's somebody to take seriously. And when you are labeled that terrorist organization, of course, that is going to just push the fear to a new level. And that is one of the many concerns that law enforcement and other agencies have when it comes to labeling them as a terrorist organization. So it is a real problem. And to close that off, of course, we know that although the ability for law enforcement is restricted to, of course, different regions or international cooperation when it comes to the India police and that when they're when they're investigating transnational crimes. So again, that there are many challenges with labeling them as a terrorist organization. It opens up a new toolbox to law enforcement, but now it's a matter of whether or not it's going to be enough to crack down, or what exactly the government needs to do to get a handle on this. Another concern is the recent announcement that there are going to be budget cuts throughout the federal government, which is going to have a direct impact on the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That may have a direct impact on ongoing investigations that are happening at this time at the federal level, and it could have a detrimental impact on future investigations at that same level. And of course, when we're looking at transnational crimes, the crime syndicates, the individual crimes and such that are linked across borders, that is a big concern of many people who are looking at the ongoing extortion rings that are going on throughout the country. If they don't get a handle on it soon, then of course there is also a major risk that other organized crime groups from different countries around the world could start looking at their own diasporas to start targeting. If they think that they can get away with this extortion in Canada, the other groups may start to follow suit, whether it's from Japan, whether it's from China, whether it's from Russia, Iran, and so forth. So again, still a very big concern, Angus, and the ongoing violence only seems to be heating up at this time.
Yes, I think the biggest shock really of this is its re-emergence and its resurgence, because clearly the RCMP have been trying to clamp down on it in a big way. It has hit the headlines a lot recently, and a lot of resources have been poured in, including transnational resources, working with law enforcement across the border in the United States. So clearly they are trying very hard to clamp down on it. So it really is, I would say, a huge concern that it seems to be resurging despite this massive clampdown, which shows that the Bishnoi gang and any affiliates and plus any other gangs operating just living in without fear of law enforcement, which in itself is not a healthy situation for any society to have to endure. I think clearly there is, there's a lot of bandwagon jumping here. I think any gang who are up to no good are thinking, let's claim we're from the Bishnoi gang as well, because clearly he has a reputation that has spread, and ironically that is actually helping other criminals to jump on that same reputational bandwagon, which again helps to just perpetuate that same reputation even further and farther afield. So that's no great thing. Interestingly, I wonder also if there is a very deliberate targeting of organised crime from India, that it is primarily targeting the South Asian communities. And I wonder if this is primarily because they realise if they target more white people, of course the majority white population, will that really trigger a massive clampdown? And I wonder if there is an element of playing the game here, playing the sort of the discrimination game here, and they think, okay, maybe systemically the North American social structure is geared up to generally protect white people, but it's minorities, well, we don't care quite so much. So they're wondering, well, maybe if we just keep targeting South Asians, it's not going to trigger such a reaction from the government. Maybe, who knows? But ultimately, we do know the police, the RCMP have been pouring a lot of resources into this. So I don't think there is, in my opinion, any real element of that. It is a huge concern, and it also becomes a huge concern when it jumps over from being a simple criminal organisation into a political organisation. Again, we touch on this quite regularly, where a lot of Khalistan activists have been targeted by organised crime from India, particularly the Bishnoi gang. It does appear that the Bishnoi gang does have a particular personal vendetta against the Khalistan community. So again, if there is a resurgence of organised crime and it does have this political element, then of course anybody waving a Khalistan flag is going to be living in fear. That, again, is so undemocratic, that is so against anything that the Western democracy stands up for. If you have a political opinion, then it has to be respected, whether you agree with it or not. And to be targeted by criminal activity, to be targeted by extortion, etc., it just flies in the face of everything that a normal, modern, civilized democracy stands by. So, again, as I often say, this is India's greatest and worst export. It's this organised crime. What is Modi doing about it? Well, clearly not enough. The West are trying their best, but even are the West doing enough about it? But ultimately, it's coming from India. And India keeps saying, we are a modern democracy, we are a future superpower. Well, a future superpower that is exporting third world crime. It is exporting something that belongs, frankly, in a banana republic. It doesn't belong in a modern society. And unfortunately, this is a bit of a stain on India's reputation. Yet another one, James. As I say, it's when it verges also on the political side, when it becomes anti-Khalistan, then that really proves that India, once again, isn't just really not belonging in the top table in terms of a functioning society. It also means it is just not a democracy. It cannot claim itself to be a democracy.
Exactly, Angus. And there are other concerns, of course, about the potential involvement of government and other officials in India that may be tied in with the Bishnoi gang or in other areas, because we know that they are not adverse to using these gangs to perform different threats or even actions against the Sikh diaspora, especially when it comes to transnational repression and foreign interference. So again, that ugly head rears itself once again. But the Peel Regional Police, the RCMP, the Surrey Police Service, the Abbotsford Police, they are working so diligently on this. but they just can't seem to get a hold of it. And again, as you pointed out, they've been working well with law enforcement agencies throughout California and the other parts of the United States and federal levels. So again, hopefully we see some different transition in terms of how they're dealing with this and how it moves forward in the future. Now, I did do up a lengthy article that gives a lot more detail and information on this problem and the other links, including that of the potential state sponsoring of this. So if you're interested, just send us an email here at Satledge TV and we'll send you a copy of this. We are looking at potentially adding a Substack link to our program that would allow you to actually read all of these different articles that Angus and I do and present on this show. And, it might be a small subscription fee monthly or something, but it would give you the access to all of these in-depth reports that we cover briefly, because there's so much information we can't get it all to you in one show. So again, let us know if that's of interest to you. Angus, I'll send it right back to you to move on because I'm killing up too much time here tonight.
Indeed, racing against the clock as always. Indeed, yes. Let's move across to my first story. And at the end of last week, we had a flying visit from Narendra Modi here in the UK. He came to visit our Prime Minister, Surrender Starmer, as I call him. And so of course all eyes were on this meeting, and particularly from the Sikh community, because a lot of issues affecting the Sikh community that we've been very keen for our Prime Minister to raise with Narendra Modi. But of course, ultimately, we know that the prime purpose of this meeting between the two leaders is more about trade. It's more about money, commerce, dollars. That's really ultimately what we know that they'll be talking about. But the big question is, are they going to raise, or did Starmer raise the case of Jagtar Singh Johal? There's no way, obviously, Narendra Modi's going to raise it. He's not going to volunteer the story. But the question is, did Surrender Starmer live up to his name and just not mention it and just not have the guts to stand up to Mr. Modi? Or did he actually raise it? Well, we are actually waiting for a statement. Apparently, there may well be a statement forthcoming about this subject. I think Starmer would be the world's greatest coward if he didn't even address it after so much pressure, even from his own MPs, from his own party. So again, as soon as something is publicly stated, we'll obviously report on it. But unfortunately, as I keep saying, don't hold your breath. The expectations are not great. Certainly from past track record. Reprieve, which is a campaign group who campaigns for people that it believes has wrongly been imprisoned. They did make a statement actually prior to the meeting, and they said Jagtar has been found not guilty of the allegations against him, and it should be a priority for Keir Starmer to secure his release and return to Britain. Trying him again for the same crime on the same evidence is prohibited in India's constitution and in international law. It's a clear-cut case of double jeopardy, and it's in everyone's interest to see it resolved. This week's talks are a rare chance to make progress at the very highest level. And, again, I mean, that is just one organisation of many that have, of course, been lobbying and pressuring the government, and, of course, David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary. And of course, Jaggi's brother, Gurpreet Singh Johal, has also spoken and lobbied David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, and he said, in fact, he quoted, "I'm putting my faith in the Prime Minister to get this done and bring Jagtar home." Well, I hate to be a bit cynical. I think your faith might be slightly misplaced, but anyway, we'll keep hoping. He was rightly critical of the previous government's failure, and he recognised that Jagtar is arbitrarily detained. And he said his Foreign Secretary, that's David Lammy, has told me personally twice that resolving the case is a priority for this government. That means it should be high on the agenda when the leaders meet. And, I think, in fact, he even says, over the last 8 years, I've grown very tired of fine words and weak excuses for a lack of action while my brother grows old in prison. The time is now. It would be devastating if the Prime Minister lets this golden opportunity slip away. Yeah, I mean, again, I hate to sort of be rather cynical about this, but unfortunately the track record, not just the previous government, the Conservative government, but this current government, which has now been in for 1 year and made all these promises prior to taking power. And again, we have to judge on results, and the results are nothing, absolutely nothing. They're not even acknowledging now that he is arbitrarily detained. They've dropped that language, which is so important, and they're not even recognising that. So unfortunately, well, as I say, we'll wait and see if it was actually raised. But unfortunately, I suspect that Surrender Starmer has and will live up to his name. Now, interestingly, it wasn't, and of course, when Modi appeared at Downing Street, that's the home of the Prime Minister, there was, of course, a protest, quite an extensive protest. There were a lot of people outside Downing Street protesting Modi's arrival and for various issues, not least Jagtar Singh Johal. But interestingly, there was another one. And in fact, there is another British citizen, as it turns out, who's also in jail for the same amount of time, who has been arbitrarily detained. This guy, he in fact is a Christian. He wasn't a Sikh like Jagtar, but he was a Christian, and his relatives were also there protesting. Now he himself has spent 7 years like Jagtar. Jagtar's just approaching 8. I think it's in November. But this guy, a British national, spent 7 years in Tihar jail without trial, and despite bail orders from the Delhi High Court and India's Supreme Court, he's still in prison. He's been granted bail, but he's still in prison because he failed to meet the conditions determined for his release, keeping him in this sort of political limbo, and he's unable to even get out of prison, even though he's, again, still facing any sorts of formal charges or trial. And it was his brother who said, a British national has now been illegally detained by Indian authorities for 7 years, yet neither the previous government nor the present one has taken any concrete action against his inhumane conduct. They say they'll raise interest in the case, and after 7 years, is that all? It's ridiculous. It's funny how the parallels, so it's not just Jagtar, this is the failure of the British government, our so-called democratic government that has invaded other countries on the basis of imposing democracy. Well, 2 of our British citizens, at least 2 of our British citizens, are residing in Indian jails without trial after 7 years. And again, it's another case just like Jagtar. And there's an article that was actually in the Times that covered this one. And they say that the meeting between Starmer and Modi were obviously here to sign a sweeping trade agreement worth $6 billion in investment and is expected to boost Britain's GDP by nearly £5 billion. Great, fine, okay, that's all very well and good. But what about democracy? Does anybody care about democracy? Clearly our leaders don't. And the article continues, and it just sums up really what the situation. It says, India's legal system is notoriously slow and overburdened, which is why it has a law stipulating that a suspect must be released from prison once they've served half of what would have been their maximum sentence if they were convicted. Now, in this case, this Michel, as his name is, he's been in prison for 7 years, meaning he actually should have been released midway through 2021, 4 years ago. Is actually when he should have, if he'd served or if he was being sentenced, he would have been released 4 years ago. And instead he still resides in jail. And the article continues, trade, security cooperation and joint efforts against organised crime dominated the headlines around the summit. But despite the family's heartbreak, Michel's imprisonment was not raised publicly during Modi's UK visit. Neither leader allowed the media to ask any questions, and their talks took place in the Prime Minister's country residence, Chequers, away from any public displays of anger in London. So again, this is utter cowardice from our Prime Minister. It is a shameful example of bad leadership, of really poor leadership, of a failure of a so-called democratic government to hold another government that claims itself to be democratic to account. And once again, James, here we are again talking about the Jagtar Singh Johal case, but also this other case. And again, they're not the only cases, but we obviously talk about the Jaggi case because that is the one most pertinent to our audience. But this is a profound failure of our government once again. And well, let's wait and see what statement comes. And I will predict that the statement will have lots of words, but will actually have no results. There will be nothing concrete once again in any statement. It will be just playing to the audience. It will be just words, blah, 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 as I often say. Once again, James. So keep saying, don't hold your breath. We can only judge by results.
Exactly, Angus. And let's not forget that a lot of the nations, including Canada, they don't release information when it comes to the numbers or identification of people who are locked or imprisoned in foreign nations when it comes to their citizens. So without his brother speaking out for him, then a lot of people may not have known that Jaggi was in prison. He has done such an amazing, dedicated job to raising the plight of his brother and keeping it on the international stage in diplomatic circles and elsewhere that that is a lot of dedication, a lot of work. So I really give him credit for that. And when you think about it, when you look at the 2021 was the most recent stats that I could find with the National Crime Research Bureau in India. Indian prisons population had 77% under trials, which means that people facing trials. So these are an amazing amount of people that are incarcerated waiting trial. And only 22% of their prisoners are convicted, with almost half the under trials in prison for more than 2 years. Out of 5.5 million people, prisoners that are in prison, 4.2 million were awaiting trial, and it's just insane. And I don't know how accurate those numbers are in the report, but again, it just shows what a disproportionate number of people are really locked up for years pending trials with no real recourse or ability to get bail and be released pending trial. And Jaggi is just another one that really shines a light on the failures of that criminal justice system, Angus.
Yes, it is shocking. And again, it's India inherited a functioning, very effective legal system and judicial system from the British Empire. And all very well and good gaining your independence and inheriting it, but it's just fallen apart ever since. The slow pace of justice has just become a national joke. And talking of which, my second story is, it's about 2 Punjab police personnel who have finally been convicted in a fake encounter case from an incident in 1993. And this just really highlights just what an almost farcical situation the Indian judicial system has become. It has taken this long to bring 2 Punjab police officers to account for a fake encounter that carried out in 1993. And of course, this was right in the middle of when tens, if not hundreds of thousands of young Sikhs were taken out into the countryside. They were tortured, first of all, taken out into the countryside and just were murdered in cold blood in these so-called fake encounters, basically where they were just shot dead, and then a fake story was created saying, they were escaping custody, or they were terrorists, or they fought back, or whatever, but basically they were murdered, many of which were then disappeared. They were cremated anonymously and never to be seen again. So finally, anyway, a court has actually finally caught up with 2 of these characters. And one of them, Bias, he was a station officer, Paramjit Singh, he's now aged 67. He's just been in prison for 10 years for abduction in the case of 2 constables in Amritsar. And he is now actually a retired superintendent of police. So he had a great career, he had a stellar career. He rose to the top of the police force, even after having murdered, at least 2 young Sikh men. And the inquiry of the case was heard by the CBI court, and it delivered its judgment. And it said that Constable Surmukh Singh from the village of Muchal and Constable Sukhwinder Singh from Kiala were abducted from their homes by police teams led by Station Officer Paramjit Singh and ASI Ram Labaya, who actually died during the trial. So he fortunately for him, escaped justice for most of his life. But these 2 men were later killed in a staged encounter by the police party of SHO Dharam Singh from Lopoke police station, who falsely claimed they were unidentified terrorists. Now, of course, families of the victims have pretty mixed feelings about the verdict, and noting that while the punishment was light and some were acquitted, the truth about the real terrorists has come out. Of course, these 2 police officers were ultimately the real terrorists in this. And unfortunately, the son of one of the victims of this encounter is actually, there's been a lot of articles about him and about how he struggled, of course, because When his father was originally arrested and then subsequently murdered by the police, he was falsely labelled a terrorist. Now this, of course, then carried with it a stigma. So that meant all his family then were stigmatised. They had to carry this stigma forevermore that their father, this lad's father, was a terrorist. Now he's struggled to get work ever since, and it's really blighted his life going forward. He says 4 generations of his family suffered due to the atrocities of the Indian state, and he himself had to lose his job because his father was labelled as a terrorist. So again, the knock-on effect is this absolutely enormous. In other words, the impact of this false accusation of being a terrorist, not least his murder at the hands of the state, then affects a whole host of other people directly linked to the gentleman. Now, the Kalra Mission Organisation, the KMO, and one of the members of that is the wife of Jaswant Singh Kalra, the activist who himself was murdered for highlighting these extrajudicial killings. She jointly set up the Kalra Mission Organisation, the KMO, that is very active on behalf of highlighting situations like this and gathering the evidence to bring these people to justice. And the KMO called it a partial realisation of the sacrifices made by Jaswant Singh Kalra. And they renewed their call for declassification of all government files related to fake encounters and independent investigations into the properties of police officers accused of human rights abuses. Well, I think you can ask that and renew your claim for that, but it's unlikely it's ever going to happen. The Indian state is closing ranks, unfortunately. It's very unlikely the Indian state are ever going to help in any way to highlight the horrors and the atrocities that were perpetrated by the Indian state back in the 1980s and 1990s. And unfortunately, James, I think this really highlights once again the situation. It's justice delayed is justice denied. And unfortunately, it's taken 30 years pretty much to bring these guys to justice. We've seen it over and over again. Slowly but surely, just a handful of the guilty have been brought to justice, but so many of the guilty have managed to live long, full lives and died prior to justice ever catching up with them. And again, it's just a national shame for India.
Absolutely. And again, it's something that we have reported on with not only this instance, but with the genocide and just all of the cover-ups or the delays and the political interference with the criminal justice system there has caused the suffering and the longevity of suffering to the families of the victims. Not only the parents or the siblings, but again, it goes on generational. Because these cases drag on, they have a direct impact on the whole family unit, going right down to the grandchildren who shouldn't have to be dealing with any of this, and yet here it is, Angus.
Indeed, and the KMO, I mean, they made a lot of statements about this after the sentencing, the 10 years that this guy was given. But they did turn their attention on the political parties like Congress, BJP, unsurprisingly, the AAP and the Shiromani Akali Dal, the Badal version of it. They said, they criticised them for glorifying the Punjab Police's role in what they called eliminating terrorism, but actually at the same time turning a blind eye to the complete abuse of power, the illegal killings and the targeting of Sikh men, of young Sikh men. But also it turned its specific attention on the current Bhagwant Mann-led AAP government in Punjab for repeating past injustice. And they did highlight, of course, the case of Bhai Amritpal Singh, who's imprisoned under the NSA over on the other side of India. And the government's failure to commute Bhai Balwant Singh Rajwana's death sentence, and of course the continued imprisonment of so many Sikh political prisoners for over 30 years, who still remain in prison despite having actually served their terms. And as the KMO said, it was evidence of an ongoing, what they call jungle Raj in Punjab. And they'd finally said, let there be a full independent investigation into the 25,000 fake encounters of Sikhs. And I think that number is an underestimate. Let no government celebrating martyrdom days of the Gurus have the hypocrisy to support police atrocities. May God guide those in power to justice and awaken the people of Punjab to resist tyranny. Powerful words, James. So anyway, on that note, let us move on to our comments section. Right, loads of comments. Thank you to our wonderful audience for all your contributions. And we'll start with Stay Safe, who's been a huge contributor in recent times. And this is an interesting one. This is something we've actually not covered at all, actually. I think this is a really important point. Talking about the Punjab's wildlife. And again, we talk about how the Punjab has been deliberately targeted by political policy to try and really damage it and undermine its potential success, whether commercially or socially or whatever. We talk about the drugs problems, we talk about its declining industry, etc. But what we haven't covered, of course, is what Stay Safe talks about, which is the wildlife. And as you rightly point out, it's fading. 40% of wetland birds have vanished. Just 3 Indus River dolphins remain in the Bears. The gharial was reintroduced, but lacks follow-up studies. Rare sightings of tigers and leopards have gone viral, etc., etc. And loads of examples of actually how the wildlife has been desperately neglected. But as you rightly point out, once Khalistan is established, nature will, of course, form a really key, fundamental part of what Khalistan will stand for. And, of course, there will be a serious commitment, as you say, to protect endangered plants and animals, reviving the wetlands, territorial and marine life, give hope to the World Wildlife Fund that Punjab cares not only for fellow human beings, but lives of animals. Absolutely. I think that's a really important point, James. I think we've even neglected it. We haven't talked about it enough, but it is such an important part. I mean, Khalistan, that geographical area, is such a beautiful geographical area. And of course, it is home to huge varieties of wildlife. And that, frankly, just as important as people.
Absolutely, and I think that it's important that when Khalistan is formed and we're over there, we get to go on these tours to visit the wildlife, because for some reason I don't think that Modi's going to let us into India to go and to be tourists. So I'll look forward to that day, because I know that they will protect the wildlife.
Indeed. So thank you for your comments, Stay Safe, and that's actually highlighted an area we actually haven't talked about. So. TC says, oh yes, this is after I had a fascinating podcast with Dr. Grewal, Gurinder Grewal, last week, and he talked about a fascinating topic. It's all about tyranny, how to recognise it, certainly how it's been ongoing, how tyranny has sort of evolved into the 21st century, the sort of the modern version of tyranny. And he talked a lot about the classic playbook, the classic sort of textbook example is the 1930s Germany and the rise of Nazism, and how Nazism then took complete authoritarian control of Germany, and that was, up until that point, a normal functioning democracy. And he talked a lot about how the warning signs emerged, what the warning signs were, how to keep an eye out for them, and of course and he talked about this 20-point guide on how to spot tyranny and how to deal with it, and certainly in the modern context, and of course how it relates to modern day India. And I have to say, it's quite concerning how many of those points that are almost like a tick box of this is what a modern tyranny looks like, these are the signs to look out for, and it's quite frightening how many of those signs are actually in place in modern day India. So again, it's well, as I said in the introduction at the time, are we imagining this? And it turns out, no, we're not. Those signs are there. And TC says, the book sums up, and because Dr. Grewal he showed this book, this fascinating book about the 20 signs of tyranny. And as TC says, the book sums up perfectly what tyrannical practices are. On how to and how to deal with it. It's starving the tyrant of oxygen. That's the only way to deal with it. Is just not play by the tyrant's book. Is not feed into the tyrant's rise to power. It's very subtle. It's like boiling a lobster, as I often say. Is that you've got to realise that you are being boiled alive. You've got to jump out the pot before it becomes too late, James.
Absolutely, and I mean, right there when he says stand up to the bully. Again, the knowledge is power, and that is the important part, is that the more knowledge people have, the more power they have. And that's a great part of your podcast, is that you're giving people that education, Angus.
Indeed, and it's all about recognising what's going on and then having the courage to do something about it, to actually stand up to it. And that's all about all of us standing shoulder to shoulder, calling it out for what it is. And of course, unsurprisingly, it did attract a few critics, but it's great to see Ashley Kandar back, who hasn't been back for a while. Welcome back, Ashley Kandar, with your contribution. Biggest nonsense I've ever heard. No point even responding except to request a copy of his qualifications. Well, first of all, I don't think that is a fair criticism. I don't think it was any nonsense whatsoever. I think everything he said is actually totally, apart from the fact that it's supportable by facts, I think it was a very, very interesting analysis of what tyranny looks like, whether it relates to India or not. So it wasn't nonsense. It was actually, there was a lot of genuine value in there. So actually, I disagree with your criticism on that. But the thing about having a go at his qualifications, he is actually a very highly qualified medical doctor, is Dr. Grewal. And I'll just leave it, I won't read it out in full, but Stay Safe just wades in defence of Dr. Grewal and the thrust of the defence, which has actually turned beautifully back into attack on India, is saying, have you any idea how corrupt India is? Basically, India is so deeply, endemically corrupt that you can't even dare stand up and accuse anybody else of having fake qualifications because the legs that you stand on just don't even exist. So there you go, James. I would say a pretty robust response from Stay Safe on that one.
It was quite lengthy, but it was very to the point. It was good. I enjoyed it as well. So.
And then final set, Avtar Dhillon. This is slightly concerning. You claim you sent loads of messages online to your channel, but they never seem to appear, especially even when you reload to watch. Is Hindutva blocking it? Something's not right. Investigation needs to take place. Well, have a good weekend, mate, and so to you. Are these? I'd say first of all, are these messages you put actually on the videos in the comments section? We do know comments just don't always appear for some reason. Yes, it is very likely that Hindutva and Hindutva forces who operate in Silicon Valley. We do know that Google, which owns YouTube and operates YouTube, we do know that a very large percentage of their workforce is, of course, from the Indian diaspora, many of whom is very likely report into India and into masters pulling their own strings from Hindutva forces and, of course, from Indian intelligence. So, yes, it is very likely. We do know this channel is shadow banned, that the evidence is all over. For example, over the weekend, we found another TikTok channel. Somebody has a TikTok channel and is actually illegally copying a lot of our programs, a lot of Surrender Singh's programs on the Punjabi side, and just packaging them up into their own TikTok. And that's got something like 200,000 followers. They're getting millions of views because that one hasn't been identified yet and been shadow banned. So the material that we're producing, we know is popular, has the potential to reach millions of people. But our numbers are still restricted because, yes, we are being shadow banned. Hindutva has identified our channel. Of course, we are banned in India. Fortunately, we do have an Indian audience who've managed to find a way around it. But ultimately, yes, unfortunately, it is very clear that comments are being restricted. They are being stopped to get through. And the viewings are down because, again, they are ensuring that people can't find us. Even subscribers are struggling to find us. There was one comment, and actually I haven't highlighted it, I should have done. There's one comment saying, just casually said, "Oh, you've been away. Haven't you? It's nice to see you back." No, we haven't been away. We are here every day. It's just that your perceptions that we've been away is because they're hiding us from you. That's what it's all about. So, James, yeah, we are up against some very powerful forces.
Yeah, unless they were late in getting that message when we were off for a week, but that was not last week, so that message just seems out of place. And again, that's something throughout the week when we talk about AI and technology and the propaganda machines, as well as we're going to take a look specifically at how it is impacting the algorithms and the flow of information when it comes to blocking, shadow banning, and all of that. So
yeah, and Paramjit Benning says, very good, highlighting facts. It's like that since 1947. Well, I think James and I are not quite old enough to have been reporting since 1947, maybe just about, but not quite. But ultimately, yes, we are here for the 21st century just to highlight exactly what is going on. And that is what we're here for, highlighting facts, James.
Absolutely.
But as SSI Singh says, but sad news. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we'd love to bring you good news and happy news every day. But unfortunately, the real reason we're here is to highlight, back to that last story, tyranny. We're here to highlight tyranny, an ongoing tyranny. It is up to people like us to call out the warning signs, to let the general population of India realize what it is that is going on in their own country, because they are so protected from the truth. Just like in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, where the Nazis controlled the narrative, they controlled the media, so people didn't get the truth, they didn't hear about the truth. They didn't know about, for example, the majority German population didn't know that concentration camps existed, that horror, that Holocaust that was going on. People only discovered it after the war. And that was a prime example of what an authoritarian regime can do when it controls the media. And that's what's happening in India. Most Indians don't know the truth about really what's going on in India, about the dreadful persecution that's going on against its minorities. So that's why we exist. Sadly, it is sad news, unfortunately, James.
As they say, those that control the media control the narrative.
Exactly that. Hardal Singh, this is nice. Watching your show always with family and friends. That's lovely. It's nice. So I sort of have pictures of you all sort of gathered around the old television set like in the old days as a family. Well, not quite. I think that shows our age, but certainly gathered around the screen or whatever it is that you watch us on. But welcome. Thank you for joining us. Oh, well, thank you for being a regular. I know you've been with us for a very long time. So our best wishes from the team to all of you out there, particularly our regular viewers like you, Hardal Singh, and your family. So thank you for watching, and do spread that word. And final comment goes to Mastan Singh Dulai, who says, the solution is free of Khalistan land from India. Well, basically, let me just rephrase that. So, yeah, there is only one solution, and that is the free land of Khalistan that is not forming part of any India. It is a free sovereign nation for the Sikh people, James.
That's exactly it, Angus.
Indeed. And on that note, as always, we do like to leave on a positive Khalistan Zindabad note, but that is it for another day. Perspectives wrapping up for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Do keep those comments coming in. Very much appreciated. We've had loads of comments, even those that have managed to get through. But if your comments don't get through, do keep trying. Just try maybe on a different video or whatever. But ultimately, do keep trying, because most of them do seem hopefully to get through. Don't forget, you can, of course, if there is something you really want to tell us, you can message us directly at message@satluj.tv.com. And we do, of course, read every email that comes in. So thank you for those who have been emailing us. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.